The Washington meeting wasn't a breakthrough, but here's what we know. US President Donald Trump hosted Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the White House for more than 2 hours. It was their fourth meeting. The talks focused on long-range Tomahawk missiles and Trump's planned meeting with dictator Putin in Hungary. Formally, the visit had two main goals: arms supplies and energy security of Ukraine. The tone of the meeting was calm, which with Trump is already a good sign, but there were no major surprises. The American president declined to support the quick transfer of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, saying it is not easy. Yet these weapons could change the course of the war and giving Ukraine a significant advantage. Volodymyr Zelenskyy insisted that the issue remains on the agenda, but requires more work. The two leaders clearly see peace differently. Trump spoke about the possibility of a deal, while Zelenskyy emphasized that Russia continues its attack despite US calls for a ceasefire. Trump, however, remains optimistic, suggesting that the recent ceasefire between Israel and Hamas could serve as a model for momentum for ending the war in Ukraine. There was also a lighter moment when Trump complimented Zelensky's appearance, calling him very stylish in that jacket. Although no concrete agreements were announced, the meeting sent an important signal. Washington is not stepping away from the negotiations table, but is looking for new ways to influence how this war ends. Europe needs to grow up in this war. That's how German Chancellor Friedrich Merz put it. He commented on Volodymyr Zelenskyy's visit to the White House, saying the meeting did not go as the Ukrainian president had hoped. Merz said it's a clear sign that Europe must take greater responsibility, financially, politically and militarily. He warned that Ukraine cannot simply stop fighting because if it does, Russia will move on to attack another country. The Chancellor added that Moscow has never come to terms with the fall of the Soviet Union and that Vladimir Putin still calls it the greatest catastrophe in Russian history, a mindset that fuels his aggression against Ukraine and Europe.
This war could be over within 24 hours if Ukraine stops fighting and hands the country over to Russia. But then we can only assume that tomorrow there will be another country attacked by Russia. Moldova could be one, it could be the Baltic states. And even here at home, we see every day how Russia carries out cyber attacks, how Russia is responsible for disinformation, and many other things.
But actually, Poland is preparing its civilians for a possible war with Russia. According to The Telegraph, a growing number of Poles are joining survival courses, shooting range and military-style training programs. Participants learn first aid, firearms handling, and even guerrilla tactics. Poland sees itself as one of the countries most exposed to a potential Russian attack if NATO were to be targeted. The government plans to raise defense spending to 4.5% of GDP this year and expand basic military training for adult men. Piotr Churilio, founder of the Polish Survivor Network, says tens of thousands have already joined, learning how to react under combat conditions and defend their communities. The surge in interest began after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and a recent drone incidents on Polish territory. At the same time, Poland is strengthening cooperation with allies. Together with Scandinavian, Baltic and Ukrainian partners, it is building Camp Jomsborg, a new NATO training hub for drone operations and field exercises. A months-long campaign of Ukrainian drone strike on Russian oil refineries is now causing severe fuel shortages and record price hikes across Russia, according to the latest assessment from the Institute for the Study of War. Gasoline prices have surged by 10% since January 2025, the sharpest rise in 15 years, while fuel scarcity has spread from southern regions to Siberia. Analysts warn that the situation could trigger higher inflation and broader macroeconomic instability inside Russia. Satellite imagery reviewed by the Institute for the Study of War shows extensive damage to multiple oil storage tanks at the Feodosia terminal in occupied Crimea, following a wave of Ukraine drone attacks in October. Independent Austin Group Frontelligence Insight estimate that at least 19 large and 6 smaller fuel reservoirs were destroyed or disabled. Russia is now struggling to repair the terminal, which plays a key role in supplying its Black Sea Fleet and military depots in Crimea. It remains unclear whether Moscow can restore the facility at all. Since August, Ukrainian forces have carried out at least 58 strikes on Russian energy facilities, temporarily knocking out up to 21% of the country's refining capacity, roughly 1.4 million barrels per day. The European Union has described the planned meeting between Donald Trump and dictator Putin in Budapest as a political nightmare. That's according to El País, which reports the EU officials see the idea as an insult. Putin and Trump intend to discuss the war in Ukraine in EU soil, but without involving the European Union itself. For Brussels, it's both a diplomatic embarrassment and a strategic concern, the US president meeting a war criminal in the heart of Europe, while EU leaders are left out of the room. European diplomats say the choice of Budapest was deliberate. It plays to Moscow's advantage by deepening divisions within the EU and benefits Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who faces national elections next year. Another issue is logistics. If Putin does travel to Hungary, EU member states may have to grant him special flight permits or force him to take a longer route around their airspace. Publicly, EU leaders say any talks that help end the war are welcome, but privately, several senior officials described the upcoming meeting as a political nightmare. Trump announced the Budapest summit after a phone call with Putin on October 16, their first in nearly 2 months. Following that call, Trump said it was not the right time for additional sanctions on Russia and revealed that Putin did not like the idea of supplying Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles. That's all for now. For more content, please subscribe.